and greetings from the Orlando Museum of Art. I'm David Madison. I'm the Associate Curator of Education and Outreach here at the museum. And I am so excited to be with Azella Santana, the Associate Director, Alumni Engagement for the University of Central Florida's College of Arts and Humanities. And we're here in our current exhibition, Eclectic Nights, which is a part of our first Thursday series. Azella, do you want to share a little bit more about this show?
I'm happy to. So this is the 12th annual Eclectic Nights event that we collaborate with the Orlando Museum of Art during their first Thursdays program. And we're really excited to be able to present over 34 artists here in this exhibition that include alumni, students, and faculty of the University of Central Florida. We have a really wonderful opportunity to actually meet some of the artists here today and actually show some of the works here online before our Zoom live event on Thursday. We really encourage everyone to come down. It is open through the end of the week to take a look at the works and have an opportunity to kind of see what some of the talents that is coming out of the University of Central Florida.
So usually our first Thursday shows are just on one evening. We have large crowds that kind of swarm into the museum, and in an effort to protect everyone's health and safety, we are doing a virtual event on Thursday. But the show, like you said, is going to be up through Sunday of this week. It's totally free to visit, so I encourage you to come out. And like Azella said, we do have the opportunity today to meet a few of the artists.
Yes.
So let's start
Let's
out.
walk over and
this
see
is
some.
so exciting. And the whole intention of this show, just real quick, is to kind of highlight UCF students, alumni, faculty, and staff, and the real vast creativity of their works. And Elaheh here, yes, you're a current student at UCF.
Yeah, of course.
Great. And what are you studying at UCF?
I'm studying art and, in fact, studio art and design in visual art department.
Wonderful. And so you have these beautiful, are they drawings or paintings?
Yeah. They are a kind of Iranian art called illumination. Yes. First I draw the basic designs and then I paint them.
They're incredibly intricate.
Thank you.
And so it's all hand drawn?
Yeah, of course.
Wow. When I first saw these, Azella and I were talking about them yesterday. I mean, they just look like almost graphic, right? Like almost like they were done with a computer, but the fact that you've done them by hand.
Yeah.
So illumination, can you tell us a little bit more about what illumination is?
Yeah, illumination is a kind of, as I said, is a kind of Iranian art. It's about painting and illuminating of books and other things. And for designing the illumination, first I draw a part of design that vary according of the design structure. For example, I design one half of it, and then I transfer it on an original paper by transparent paper, and then I copy rest of design. The next step, I use gold, gouache, and watercolor to paint it. As you see, you can see a gold in background of this design, which is very shiny. And for painting the illumination by gold, I first powder the gold and then paint it on paper and use a specific nature stone for fixing the gold on paper.
Okay.
And so as a result, it will be fixed and shine.
Okay, gotcha. So that's how you get that gold.
Yeah.
It's just
And
beautifully inlaid.
Thank you.
Yes.
And finally, I use gouache and watercolor to paint the rest of
So it's a full mixed media experience, but it's all done by hand. It's all hand based on your hand drawings. And is there an inspiration behind the designs themselves? Where do you come up with these shapes or some of these other ones as well? Let's look at this piece.
Yeah. Actually, illumination is inspired of nature. Actually, you can see several kinds of flowers in illumination. For example, you can see these flowers here. However, they are not exactly similar to a real flower in nature.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's almost too perfect, isn't it, for nature, right? It's so beautiful.
Thank you. And so, as a whole, you can see the abstract nature in illumination. When you look at the details, you can image a kind of nature that has the shine of sunlight between them in background by gold.
Got you.
Thank you.
Wow,
I
wonderful.
was going to ask you, so how long does it normally take you to actually finish, say, one piece with all the process and detail that goes into executing it?
About, I think for this art work, I spent about 40 days.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Incredible.
40
It's incredible.
days. As I said, I first draw and then paint.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for really teaching us about what illumination is. And I certainly encourage everyone, it's hard to tell from the camera like what the detail that goes into these works. So you have to come down and see it in person and just see the amazing detail and just the enormous handwork that goes into these pieces. Yeah. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Elaheh. And let's take a look at Christopher's work next.
Hi,
Hi, Christopher.
how are you guys?
Oh,
Thanks for having me.
yes, absolutely. I just love the Mardi Gras like colors of this one. Yesterday we just had so much fun looking at this piece.
I have a theory about color. I think that the brighter, more vibrant colors instinctively have that joie de vivre effect that people
Sure.
instinctively look for when they look at a piece, and they get that instant sort of reaction of happiness, pleasure.
Sure.
Yeah.
So is that what inspires you? Is pleasure or joy? I mean,
To a
this one
degree,
doesn't
yeah.
ask-
I would use the word escapism.
Okay.
I painted this painting during confinement, and it took approximately 3 months.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I felt like if I could escape further and further into my imagination and translate that onto canvas,
Sure.
it's almost as if the audience or the viewer is somewhere else, other than stuck in their house.
Which we can all
I know.
relate to.
Yeah.
That's it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but it's a scene from the south of France. It's actually a church called Notre Dame de Sept, which is in the south of France. And that's really where I learned to paint. I don't have any formal training as a painter, which makes it that much more great for me to be here among all you guys who are so great. But I've spent several time, a good amount of time in the south of France over the last few years, and I've just always been really inspired by the buildings and the colors, the landscape. I borrowed a little bit from Cezanne.
Yeah.
We were thinking of that Cezanne and just the lavender fields. And
Correct, exactly that, yes. And the scene, is you have a rabbit who's always kind of cute, but his Harlequin costume also implies kind of sinister. So there's a little bit of a little bit of a back and forth between fantasy and intrigue. So
this was your first oil? You shared that with
this was
us
not my
earlier?
first oil
Not first oil,
painting.
okay.
This is my first year working in oil.
Okay.
But I felt like a duck in water once I started using it. And this is sort of an indication of things to come.
Absolutely.
I painted this. Every brush stroke was followed by a knife stroke. I painted it with a brush in one hand and a knife in the other. Every single stroke was calculated to achieve a result that looks slightly not calculated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's interesting is when we were looking at it from across the room, it almost has a graphic quality to it. And then as you go up and you really see all the different strokes, similar to Cezanne, and sort of that pointillism technique where blocks of color produces like this one sole image. It was just really neat to kind of see how that correlates with each other.
Oh, thank you for that compliment. That's fantastic. Yeah, I really like the idea of creating art that has elements of realism and elements of decoration that sort of are married together to have a more soothing image than even if you were there yourself witnessing it firsthand. This is sort of easier to digest in my view. So that's the result that I was going for.
It's very playful, which I
It
appreciate.
is.
It does.
Yeah.
It just reminds me of almost like when David had mentioned escapism. It reminds me of the tale of Alice in Wonderland. You know, it's sort of
Yeah.
like you see the rabbit, and she's chasing
Yeah.
this rabbit and just going into this other realm that's something otherworldly. So it's really neat to kind of see some of those elements play with each other.
Yeah, and you sort of feel like you're there a little bit, and you're not, like I said, stuck somewhere at home or somewhere you'd rather not be. So
So what are you working on now? Are you still confined at home and painting, or
actually, I developed a taste for it. I'm actually
Good.
enjoying it, and I'm getting ready to start a very large, probably about double the size of this,
Wow.
my version of the Mona Lisa,
Mhm.
in the context of the South of France.
Yeah.
So that will be my next major endeavor.
fantastic?
We're really excited.
Thank
to
you for
see.
sharing
Thank you
your
for
work
having
with
me,
us
guys. I
today.
really
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. You know what I love about this show every year is that, well, our other First Thursdays events always seem to have like a theme, a cohesive theme. This one, because it is just all nights, we just get a more diversity in terms of approach, in terms of subject matter.
And
Do you-
experience too, which is really interesting.
Exactly.
Right here.
Oh, yeah. Marcos.
Hi,
Great.
Marcus.
So we've looked at some paintings, we've looked at a drawing, illumination. Marcos, talk to us about what we're looking at here.
Well, I can call it the Corona art.
Why is that?
Basically, I'm doing an MFA in animation and visual effects.
Okay.
I apply animation and the media technology into installations in museums. So I work a lot with video art, and I find, when all the confinement, all these things, all the news, all the coronavirus, all the how you call that, conspiracy theories, all those things, So I decided to make a series of different drawing sketches and video art and a little bit of painting. Yeah, this was done digitally. I was trained in the more traditional methods when I was younger and all that.
Okay,
Um,
so you were trained to paint, but you're working in
I
digital video.
I learned to paint with oils when I was probably 13.
Okay,
Then I saw a lot of the German expressionists, and then
yeah. I was
the
gonna say that.
painters from the 80s, the new folks.
Mhm.
And basically what happens is that I got very much influenced into that, and then into the animation and the film from the Europeans, and then a lot of the things that I saw when I saw the wall from Jules Parker and the animation of Jules Carr. So I'm mixing a lot of
All of these different
things.
references
So this
that are
is-
coming
this is
through to the work, but
basically-
reflecting on the
yeah.
time. I love that
So
you're
the-
saying that it's Corona art.
Corona art. So I kind of made a painting about puff, which is this cloud of this mixture of suffering, death, and questions and mysteries, and how a lot of different things are happening. Some have to do with medicine, some have to do with politics, and
Sure.
so I just put it there in the painting.
And these are digital works, so you're basically using digital medium to paint these works, correct?
Yeah, but I'm self-trained in the digital use of in the way of softwares. In the early 2000s and the mid, when I went to Mexico and I got a BFA in graphic design, it was in the 80s, so everything was done by hand.
Mhm.
So computers are learning the job, and then a lot of the early animations that I did in the mid 90s and early 2000s were what they call now motion media, motion graphics, and all this. But was meant to be projected on rooms using mirrors, and so you can actually. And then the stereoscopics. I did one in 2009 called Urbanoscopia, which was basically called. I call it the Schrodinger's box because it was about the future that we were looking in ourselves in these gadgets, and we had to, it's like we were 50-50 chance of being really alive or not. And I come from Venezuela, so it's kind of dangerous place. So every time you go outside, it's like 50-50 chance you don't come back. So all these things have helped me to present what I see around, because one of the things that happens that when I was 17, 16, my first encounter with professional art was making political cartoons in a newspaper. So the way I see art is it's a lot very much as a philosophical kind of political kind of expressing, which that's why I like the new Savage, the new folks from the 80s. That they actually did all these political paintings that led to what happened with the falling of the Berlin Wall and all these things.
So you are a current student at
Yeah,
UCF.
yeah,
You're in the
yeah.
Masters of Fine Arts program?
Well, I'm in the animation and visual effects.
Oh,
Track,
okay,
yeah.
got you.
Yeah, but it's the same.
So how are things going at school?
Oh,
In the current.
I'm in my
Okay.
last year. Everything's good.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for
Yeah,
sharing your
well,
work with us today, and congratulations on the MFA.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're gonna go straight to Alex over here.
And we're just highlighting a few of the
Yeah.
artists today, those that could be with us, but there are so many works to see. So again, please come down to the museum. It's absolutely free to see this show. Alex, okay, we have to talk about these. What? They're oils, right? Or mixed?
No, these are acrylics.
Oh,
So
okay,
do you
got
mix
you.
it with gel medium to kind of create that thickness?
Yes, yes. I
Very
use gel medium, and I also make my own pulp that I hand make myself. And
Oh,
I-
okay.
and yeah,
So that's how you get this really rough texture, right?
yeah, especially like up here.
Yeah.
all
I
over
know
there.
sometimes like
The
when
nails.
when you're painting with such thick paint, such as oil or acrylic, which is mixed to sort of thicken it, like how do you keep sort of the colors true to their colors while still being able to produce an image that is almost haunting when you see these images in person?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, it's very difficult. You have to basically not mix the paint as much as you really want to, and just let your hand guide you. You can't keep going over the same spot over and over again because it'll just be muddy,
So it's difficult. It might be difficult to make out on the camera, but these are figurative works. These are portraits, in fact. Are you looking at other figurative artists? Are you influenced by?
Yeah, definitely. I'll say visually, I'm inspired by Frank Auerbach,
Okay.
and conceptually wise, I'm definitely inspired by African Mask and
Interesting.
Congo power figures, the wooden figures with the nails and pieces of metal in the bodies.
Have you always worked with distorting the figure? Has that always been a theme within your work?
I've been doing that about a year now.
Okay.
Yeah, really trying to deconstruct and reconstruct the figures.
What's really interesting is the works, they're smaller, and I don't know if the audience can see, if you look in, he's incorporated different materials in there, but it also comes off the canvas too. So,
Yeah.
the piece on the right, it's almost an extension of the head that you see, and it's coming off the painting, which is really neat.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I really strive to make it very, very lifelike, even though it's very abstracted. And like you said, it's very haunting. The longer you stare at it,
But it's one of those works where the longer you stare at it, the more you
does.
see. And so that intrigues me. Like I did not see the nails at first, right? And then there's that kind of like violence to it too. That attracts me, right? Like it's this interesting kind of push and pull that's happening with these pieces.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, they look great on screen actually. So I'm so glad people can really see that they are just so thick, the buildup of the paint. very
And
tactile.
how long does it take? You know, it's more of a technical question. How long does it take for one painting to dry? Because we all know with oil especially, it can take years sometimes depending on the thickness. Like, you know, with the acrylic, do you intentionally use acrylic because it does tend to dry a little bit faster and you can kind of go over it a little bit more?
Okay.
Exactly, yeah. I use the acrylic because it dries within a few hours usually, and then I can go in and layer it on top of, layer on top of layer. Yeah, but I definitely want to try out oils though. I definitely want to go for it. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I really thank you for sharing it. It's just really, it's wonderful. And I think, just to kind of see the technique and see how that culminates in your final vision of the work is really interesting.
Very much so.
Thank you so much, Alex.
Thank you, Alex. And we're going to go over here and look at a photographer.
Yeah. So we have several photographers in this show. Oh, this one is almost painterly though, isn't it?
So we have Michael, and so I have to say this because you're a class of 1988, UCF, and explain a little bit more like how you went into photography and sort of like, you didn't have a traditional sort of track of going into photography.
Well, I studied some photography at UCF, and it's always been a passion, and I've always been a photographer, but I got my degree in film production at UCF, and I've always worked in video and film.
Okay.
So over the years, I kind of just kept doing the photography thing, but never, completely bring it to life. And then about 2013, so 7 years ago, I finally took that next step and started producing a lot of work and have had several shows and have been part of you guys' shows a few times and sold quite a few pieces. And so overall, what I strive for is that this is kind of like the smallest you'll see one of my works. But what I go for is I call it photo art. It's just a term, but I try to create works that are photography, but that if you view them maybe not so close up or whatever, that at first you can't necessarily tell if it's a photograph or a painting or some kind of
Yeah, you fooled
media
me,
other
that's
than-
for sure. At
Yeah.
first, when I first saw these images, I thought that this one definitely has a painterly quality to it.
Yes, yes.
And that abstraction too, right? Like
Yeah. I know it's hard. I tried to take a picture of it. It's really hard with the lighting because it's kind of dark on one side and it's spotted, so it kind of doesn't show up that well. But obviously, people can see it on the page and on the site. But yeah, so that's what I have. A lot of pieces. I like to print as big as like 60 by 40. And overall, a lot of my works are a little more abstract. Obviously, this is called. You can tell it's a road, it's a highway. This is up on the Blue Ridge Parkway in North Carolina, and it was just a super foggy morning, and I was driving along and took this image, and just, I took a bunch of images as photographers do, but this was the one that.
What's really interesting is when you look closely, I don't know if the audience can see it, but when you're looking closely, you can see all the different colors in this photo art. And what's interesting is you have blues and you have pinks and oranges in there, and it's very subtle, but it sort of creates a sort of almost fogginess of the image that you were trying to capture, which is really neat.
Yeah.
Are you digitally manipulating it all, or
No.
this is just the image? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
I mean, I
do you-
adjust it slightly, but there's no filters, there's no layers, there's no, and that's what a lot of times, I have several works where I apply a filter, but I would say 2/3 of my work, I'm manipulating it some, but I'm not,
So how do you know? When do you know when to take the shot, right? Because this is like a perfect moment to create that
how do
foggy.
we all take photographs that, like, I mean, if a person's not in it, you just kind of like it speaks to you that, right? That
Sure.
place and time, and being a photographer, I think the vast key is carrying a camera with you. But now with phones and everything, and especially how great the phones are, it's a lot easier for all of us to get photographs constantly. So, but otherwise, it's, I think that's one of the things with, artists and photographers, it's almost everything's a picture sometimes.
And it's intuitive too, right? Like you
That
learn how to perfect
I
that
have a very
keenness.
organic process. I mean, some things are, say mapped out a little bit more, but a lot of times it really is just being in the world with the camera. For me, it's a more organic process overall. most of my images.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you for sharing
Thank
your
you.
work with us.
Thank you for having me.
Again, I just like to put a caveat. I definitely encourage everyone to see these works in person because sometimes you can't capture that information on a video, and so it's just really beautiful.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, are we looking at John's
I
next?
think John is not here, so
Oh, John's there. Yeah.
Yeah.
John's another photographer, sculptor, and photographer.
Hello.
Hi.
So John, I know you had worked in Eclectic Nights last year, so we're really excited to have you again this year. And as you can see, it's photo-based as well as sculpture. And why don't you tell us a little bit about your sculpture? Because I think
Yeah.
it's so interesting. It is movable, so the audience can actually move the piece.
Certainly.
We'd like you to demonstrate that so we can just sort of see how it's moved.
Sure,
But
sure.
really, we'd love to learn more about that piece.
Well, it speaks to the times. It's this is a health checker here, just asking if he's okay, and he kind of gives you the old I'm okay, I'm doing fine, I got my mask on, I can breathe through this. But it does. It's kind of like about my feelings of today. I mean, we have struggles with civil unrest and just the physicality of wearing masks and such, and it's just how I feel really. And I try to portray that with fiberglass and steel because I'm a welder as well. So it's commentary really.
On the current moment.
Yeah.
I love that. I feel like a lot of these artists are responding timely to timely. So, and then the photographs too. Are we reading these as one piece or
It's
separate? Separate? Because I love the way the framing and the metal in both of these.
It just seemed to go together.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, I said that yesterday, that they just seem to mesh really well, these two works.
Yeah, and it's void of it's kind of like a lonely thing, void of people and action. There's no bicycles in the rack and such, and like you say, the lines seem to match my sculpture as well. But it is a bit lonely. The creek photograph was a long exposure shot when I was alone in the woods in North Carolina last month. And it was just a time to get away and seek some solace, alone really, which was safe. And it's not about our individual safety. I think it's more about keeping everyone else safe from us, because who knows what we're carrying. You know what I mean? So there's just so much thinking going on. You just got to be cathartic and use what you got.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us about the process? I know with these specific types of prints, there's a special process that's used. How long does it normally take you to actually produce the print and sort of make sure you have the right one?
It's darkroom photography, so this is a silver gelatin process. It depends on the print really. If it's a difficult print, it could take me an hour. It could take 10 hours. And actually, the bigger it is, the more intense the process. Of course, because there's more things you can see wrong with the print. But it's this took a couple hours. It's we do this thing called burning and dodging to get the right tones. If there's a light spot, we have to expose it longer to light, in the dark room and such. So it's and that process in itself is cathartic to me, right? Because you're alone in the dark basically, and it's silent if you want, or you have your music that makes you feel good, or however you want to do it.
And you've always worked in darkroom?
Yeah.
You've never transitioned to digital?
For work, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Just because that's people want photos now,
Absolutely.
in my own job, but for myself, producing art, I think I love the control where I load the film, I develop the film, I develop the prints. It never touches anybody but me, and it's all mine. So, and there are different kind of papers. I could spend all day on that because I teach it, but I just love it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself producing more work, especially during this time frame when we're at home and quarantined?
I do, because there's no FOMO going on. There's no you're not being pulled in every art exhibit there is in town, right?
Sure.
So it's a good time to really find yourself in art, your own individual thing going on.
Fantastic.
Well,
Well, thank you,
thank you.
John.
Thank you for having me.
So cool. And we're gonna go this direction and meet with Jacob. Hi, Jacob.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so Jacob is your recent grad, of course, I have to put that in. And I know that you love to work in different textures and paper and
Yeah.
threads. So can you talk a little bit about this piece? And we can have the camera zoom in because it's just so
Hi, Facebook.
intricate. It's got gold thread running into it and, just the detail of what you're producing. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I consider myself as a bookbinder and I make conceptual books. So as you can see, this one is not like a traditional book we can flip through or read it, but this is more like a book-alike object. So for this book, what I was thinking is like I noticed a lot of time when we smoke cigarettes or some people smoke cigarettes, they more just seek for a personal moment to get away. So when people use like, I'm gonna take a cigarette break, usually they just want to have like a personal space. They can like reflect on things or just think about things. So at that moment, they just enjoying their self, no matter about what's the reality is. They only can just go with their imagination or the ideal life they imagine. So for this piece, you can see the paper are handcrafted from cigarettes. So I handmade this paper, then I stitched this paper into the cigarette box. So this cigarette box is the cover of the book, and how I stitch this paper together become the binding of the book. And you may wonder where are the pages. So the pages are the cigarettes we already smoked. So we throw it away and it passed and it just faded in the trash can or anywhere. Just like when you're done with your cigarettes, you twist it down like a punctuation, like a period. Then you end your personal space or moments. Then you back to the reality, back to your life. So this book is kind of about content all these empty dreams or dead dreams. Yeah. That's why
This idea of
that's
the
why the
concept of the book,
daydream
really
is-
unpacking the concept of what is and is not a book. How did you start making paper and come into kind of paper arts?
So paper was like a fourth grade inventions from China, was like invented and developed in China. So I love the process of making paper. Then I started as book art and I was wondering, can I explore or be creative on the material of the book art, the page itself. So I wonder what can I do with the paper and how can I use the material that presents the moment or the experience into these pages. So for me, pages are very interesting. I also made a paper from clothes and bed sheets. So there's a lot of different elements or material you can make paper from. Yeah.
It's really interesting how he's also thinking about what is significant and what would typically be found in museums. I don't think I've ever seen a pack of cigarettes, right, handmade or otherwise, in a museum or considered a significant precious object.
Yeah.
You're kind of playing with that.
And I know with paper, it's such a delicate material to work with.
It is.
The time that goes into even creating these pieces from conception all the way to final production. Like something like this, like when you do the design process, like how do you know which materials you want to use? Like, if you're looking at paper, do you specify the types of paper? How thick is it going to be? How thin is it going to be? Like what makes you sort of decide which type of material you want to finalize in?
That's a great question. So I love the process of making paper. Since Halloween is coming, when I make paper, I always imagine I'm a wizard, so drop something in, drop something in, so just mix it and make the paper. So the process can be very improvisational. So I will have some ideas of what material I want to throw in. Then I just go with the flow because the different color of the material, sometimes when they blooming in the water, they just become different textures or image itself. So I just love when I put the paper out, whatever the color or area in the top, they speak themselves. So I think that the process itself, I try to just be organic and authentic to the process instead over design or illustrated it. So I think that honesty through the process helps me to be like raw to my materials. Yeah.
There's a tension there too, right, between the fragile nature of the paper and the like, solid, stable sculpture, right, that you're creating. So
Exactly.
it's just fantastic, and I will say it's very difficult to see these works
It is.
on
museum.
Facebook.
I know.
Come to the museum, or for those of you who are just not comfortable, ready quite yet, you can see all of these works. You can take your time, read the artist statements. It's all on our website, omart.me/First Thursday.
Yes.
So, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes. And we're gonna go back over here.
Yes. Angie.
Hi, Angie.
Hi, Angie.
So Angie, let us know. I know you're in your first year at UCF, right? And studio art?
I'm going for animation.
Animation. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your work? So what's interesting is, I know when you submitted for Eclectic Nights, you really talked about sort of the role of women, and obviously in your paintings, it's really prevalent about, what that means to you. Can you talk a little bit about that and just your process?
During the summer, I had taken an intro into the communications course, and honestly, before that course, I didn't really pay too much attention to like the social issues and things like that because I just thought it wasn't my place. But she brought up a lot of points, a lot of movements that I just thought were interesting, and I thought they would be better instead of a lesson as something visual. So I incorporated everything I learned from her class into 2 paintings that I submitted, and thankfully you guys accepted them.
Absolutely. So talk to us about what we see in these paintings. We have 2 women. We also have some animals here. How did you arrive at these animals?
I really wanted to use symbolism and a sense of naturalism. I also like to combine, I use the human figures. I tried to make them as realistic as possible that I could in order to reference Renaissance paintings because I love the painting from the Renaissance. And then I used the backgrounds as plain color. I didn't try to put too much detail into the backgrounds to remain the focus on the people, but also to kind of reference the abstract movement and make it kind of a juxtaposition. Because we're not only are we just including abstract and Renaissance art, but we're also including the human figures and the animal figures. And sometimes we think human problems are animal problems, but we can find a lot of ourselves within the animals.
That's beautiful. Now I know. So the top one is titled "Thinking of Motherhood," and the bottom one, if you can.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, sleeping. So you see the hen with the chicks, and I know with Renaissance you have a lot of symbolism in there as well. So what made you decide sort of with animals in terms of which ones you wanted to sort of use to picturize that?
So one of the lessons that we learned about in communications was that a lot of women quit before they even start because they start thinking about having a family, starting a family, and then they put that as their main focus, and then they don't accept maybe promotions at work that they could accept. And of course, every woman, they can do whatever they think is best for them. But a lot of women, even though they want to succeed, they think about what they should be doing instead of what they want to be doing. So I thought hens are naturally protective mothers. They're referenced in many literatures as animals that really take care of their young. And I thought she could be looking at the hen. She could be thinking, is that what I want for myself? Is that something I could do? Or do I want to do something else?
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Then we have a bear as well, right?
I decided to put this animal behind her because that's something more I decided to use that as something internal because another thing we learned in communications was that sometimes what little girls, they're told you can't be too bossy, stop being bossy. But apparently those same traits that the girl shows, the boys are considered leaders and active. So I decided to kind of represent that with the bear because that's something, even though we want to act like leaders, we're deemed as bossy. So that's something you should keep within yourself.
So this sounds like a fantastic class.
Yeah.
A very inspiring class,
It
absolutely.
was such an interesting class because I thought we were just going to learn about the principles of communication, but she put a lot of social issues into there, and it really opened up my mind a lot more than what it originally was when I started.
No, it's amazing, and you really do bring to light a lot of the sort of internal battles that women go through sometimes. Especially whether it's professional or personal, and I think you trying to communicate that through a visual means is really a lot of fun, and be able to sort of communicate your thoughts on that too. Yeah.
In the end, I'm just really happy because I learned a lot about the painting process, and so it's even if it was a really big learning experience for me.
So are you going to continue to paint
I
even though you're
hope so.
studying animation?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Well, thank
you so
you.
much for sharing your
Thank you
work.
guys for having me.
Of course. And then we're gonna come around this way. Meet with Anthony. I think Anthony's over here. So Anthony, why don't you, so when we saw these works, we saw two portraits, but what's interesting is that they have a like sort of very two-dimensionality to it, but it's very striking. We feel sort of there's a lot of symbolism in these portraits, and we'd love to hear more about, what inspired you to paint these and sort of the style that you chose, if, what that process looked like.
Well, I used to love doing portraits when I was younger. I used to draw and paint a lot. You always want to go into details of like a fine art, me personally. So I decided when I started going into graphic design, I wanted to make it simple. Something that identifies the person, with just simple, traits like an earring, a necklace, a tattoo. So with the colors, it's more like color theory. I was really playing along with it. But as far as the symbolism goes with the heart, with the plus and minus, it just kind of symbolizes balance. And like these day and age, it's all a balancing act. So I just kind of like making totems, like she has a heart with a key, key to your heart. This guy has a heart with the in the face, the tattoo. It's all love. I just love playing with color theory. Really, making portraits look like people. You can guess that person.
They are very graphic and minimal. So are you a designer by trade, or are you a painter?
I'm a painter background.
Okay.
I'm studying graphic design.
You're studying graphic design now. Okay.
So this is where this kind of inspiration comes from.
Yeah. It's very striking when you see it, and just like when with graphic design in general, the purpose of graphic design is to really have that pop to grab someone's attention, and I think it really does that when you see these two works, especially paired together. I don't know if you painted these together or as a set, but I feel like you see them paired together, and it just has a very striking balance between both of them.
Thank you.
I'd love to see. So is this a bigger series for you? Or are you working?
Yeah, so I worked with this one with another painting,
Okay.
same size. They were a pair and I had them together. And this one was kind of an individual one. I usually do them with pairs. They always kind of like just look at each other, and they
I
kind
was
of
just thinking
Yeah.
that. It's
Yeah.
so great the way it's curated.
Yes.
It's almost like they're talking to each
Yeah,
other.
yeah. They all have like their own story, their title really says a lot about them. So,
So you have your own totem that you keep with you?
Well,
Or?
just the heart itself is kind of my totem. I kind
Okay.
of make that adapt to every type of object, but it's very versatile. You could put it on a shoe. You can put it on I don't know, earrings and stuff, and it's very easy for people to relate to.
Mhm.
So have you done your own self-portrait?
I have not.
No.
I have not done my self-portrait. I like doing other people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just really interesting. I think we thank you for sharing it with us, and I think definitely see the graphic quality come out through your work, and it just that minimalism. It really brings out more of that messaging of what you're trying to convey to the viewer.
Are you participating in the talk on Thursday?
I am.
Great.
Yes.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
if anyone has questions, there'll be an opportunity to chime in on Thursday to ask them questions about the work.
It's another great opportunity to learn more about the
Yes.
show. So please pre-register for that program. You can visit omart.me/First Thursdays to do that as well.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you.
Yes.
Is Dane our last?
I think Dane's our last. Yes.
Okay, I have lots
Okay,
of questions.
we do.
Dane. We spent some time with these sculptures yesterday because there is something, say it, disturbing, a little disturbing about a few of these. Distorted.
Definitely.
But also, like, I feel like I step into a story in these sculptures. So tell us more. What is the story behind some of these?
And while he's
scenes?
talking, we can have the camera sort of pan through as well and see some of the
Gotcha.
details.
Well, I'm glad you said all those things. Basically, that's what I'm going for.
Okay.
Is I want you to see these as stories. A lot of the inspiration comes from cinema. So essentially, these are like small frames from a film or something without a beginning, without an end. But I leave these details and little clues that you can form your own kind of idea of a story, where these people are going, where they've been, what are they doing now, and why, how they feel. And I mean, yeah, the stories, there's like a specific thing in each one, but then you're free to explore what you think is later. And the off-kilter feel that you get from it, that's something I also want to bring to it. When I was studying narrative sculpture originally, most people there were doing whimsical fantasy stuff, which was fine. But I felt more towards the gritty, urban, kind of modern take to storytelling. And so I wanted to bring that inspiration from what I was watching at that time was a lot of Hong Kong cinema. And they have a lot of gritty, violent films with a lot of neon lights, and it really kind of gives this off-kilter, odd feeling, almost like a Dutch angle to the look of the thing. So you see what you're looking at, but then there's this mask of these colors that you kind of put you in another world. And you're like, I'm not sure if this is our world. Maybe it's slightly different, but it's something we can relate to, but feel.
So it's difficult, I think, to
All the
see, but
details.
all of the detail in these, I mean, the cat, great, the cat food, like everything.
So which
here.
material do you use? So is it like a resin material? that you
It's
sculpt
just
with,
kind of
or
like
a
a
combination?
polymer clay, a simple
Polymer
clay that I
clay.
can just get, and then you throw it in the oven and it cooks. So I don't need any kind of large kilns or any weird chemicals or anything.
Wow. And you sculpt all these individual pieces and then you put it together.
Yes, yeah. And then yes.
Oh, sorry, I was just gonna say, you graduated in 2014?
Mhm.
So did you study sculpture at UCF?
Yes, I mean, it's actually the tail end of my UCF career when I started doing these, and then I just went from there and kept going because I really loved this style.
Did you have a class or
It was a narrative
professor?
sculpture.
It was a narrative
Yes.
sculpture class.
Scott
Okay.
Kolb.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
He really got me going on that.
Well, I love that because Angie just mentioned as well that she had this experience of being in a class that inspires you to create and for you to continue. carrying that,
Absolutely.
right?
Exactly.
It really just hooked into me, and I was like,
Yeah.
wanting to explore these stories, and hopefully other people can explore these stories and send them to these moods, this atmosphere that you kind of feel off of them.
Absolutely, they're very evocative.
They really are. We were talking earlier about, when you watch superhero movies and you sort of see the rise of before they become a superhero and sort of that struggle, that internal struggle that they go through. You see some of that element of like that struggle in
The
these
drama.
figures. Yeah, the
Right?
drama that goes into
I feel
that.
like I'm launching into the
Yes.
drama.
And a lot of times I'll sculpt, I like to pinpoint a point in a person's defeated, the way they look is as defeated, something has happened to them and now they're distraught, but there's still that future that you can find. They'll
So it's
rise.
a turning point.
Yeah.
Turning
Nice.
point,
Okay.
like right before the turning point. Yeah, it's great.
So I can see with the superhero going, that's similar.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Dane.
Thank you so much, Dane.
And thank you, everyone. This has been so fun. Thank you for watching. Again, we encourage you to preview the works online. Come and see the exhibit, which is up through Sunday.
Yes, it is. Yep.
So please come to the Orlando Museum of Art, see the show, support local artists, UCF artists, and vote. So we do have a People's Choice Award. All of the information for the People's Choice Award, how to vote on many of the artists that you saw today, can be found on the website, omart.me/First Thursdays.
Yes, and we're really excited to have you join on Thursday. We have a Zoom webinar live event that you can watch, listen to some of these artists talk about their works in person, ask them questions, and really learn about sort of the scope of what they do behind their artwork. So we're really excited. It's at 6 o'clock on Thursday. Tune in through the Orlando Museum of Art. The Zoom link is on there, same website that David just referred to, and then be able to check it out.
Well, thank you.
Thank you all.